Hello, hello, hello. This is Tamika Seaton, President and CEO of Grow Your Nonprofit, where we help startups, small and stagnant nonprofits grow through fundraising strategies, strategic planning, and so much more. Today, before we get started, I'd like to thank the sponsors of my podcast. Hodges University with a campus in Fort Myers. Stay near, go far. They change lives for the better. Trinity Life Foundation Naples, helping at-risk youth with enrichment programs. AVID, that stands for the Associations of Haitians Living Abroad. They just opened an amazing enrichment center where they would help you with immigration, utility billing, and so much more. Last but not least, Vax Truth. They just received a grant from the CDC to raise awareness of COVID-19 and the vaccine in the Black and Brown communities. Guys, today you're in for a treat. I have my special guest, Alicia Miller, with Our Mother's Home. Alicia, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Tamika. Nice to be here. I'm really excited.
Yeah, it is so nice to finally get you here. I know we've been trying to coordinate our schedules. As we know, we're both busy business women.
Yes.
And we do it all. And moms too, yeah. But so I'm so happy that we were finally able to connect and talk about Our Mother's Home. Our Mother's Home is actually in my backyard. I have a home in San Carlos Park.
Oh, wow.
And so excited about the work you guys do. It's very important because I know I come from a family of 7 where there are 4 girls and 3 boys. I'm originally from Los Angeles. And both of my sisters had children at young ages. My oldest sister, she had her first baby at 13.
Wow.
And my next older sister, she had hers at 14. So everyone thought I was next, but that was not going to happen. Actually ended up having my first child at 25.
All right, I like that.
Yeah, but it was very important, child care and care. Even though they live with us, we did have a high school right across the street from my house, which is a daycare, because there were so many teen moms. So with that said, tell me a little bit more about yourself, how you came about becoming executive director with Our Mother's Home and exactly what you do.
Sure. That is a very interesting story, so I'm excited to hear more about that. But
yeah,
my background comes from education. I started as a high school teacher. I was teaching in St. Pete, and then I was teaching in Cape Coral for almost 10 years. I taught 9th grade English for the most part.
Wow.
But really, I did not love teaching from the beginning. I was the cheerleading coach, I was the class sponsor, I did all of those extra things that I really enjoyed, but the day-to-day teaching wasn't my thing. So I switched out of that after my own kids were born. It is hard work being a teacher and going home to kids, so I feel for them.
Yeah.
But then I switched over to nonprofit. I did scholarships for about 5 years. I helped low-income, at-risk students get into college.
Oh, wow.
And then I truly found a passion for nonprofit. So adolescents, youth, at-risk youth especially, I would say is my specialty. And then I was the adoption specialist for a while at Children's Network. So I learned all about the DCF process, adoptions. I learned so much about the foster care system that it really made me realize what a broken system we have.
Right.
And then I ran a couple of really small nonprofits and kind of got into Our Mother's Home almost 2 years ago. So it's been a journey, but one that kind of keeps coming back to at-risk youth. So it's just something that I feel like even though maybe I won't be able to change it today, I just want to keep focusing on it and make sure people realize that there's still issues going on.
Right. And at-risk youth is a very important topic because I grew up in South Central Los Angeles at a time where in the 80s where crack cocaine was introduced to my community, which tore it up. We started with 2-family households. People worked, people owned their home from like my neighborhood being really destroyed in the LA riots. So I say that to say, even my brother, every day he didn't want to join the gang, but he was being jumped every day because he didn't want to join. So I lived in that environment where we were all at risk. So out of the 7 of us, I was kind of like the different one in the family. I never fit in with anyone, and I often got teased. So I was also at risk too because I actually wanted to drop out of high school because I was so different and I was teased because I didn't fit in. But with that said, I guess I had an angel look over me to get me through that and get me to where I'm at today, where I've been successful. However, I I left a lot of people behind who didn't make it. So how can at-risk youth be helped when you have all the services there, but they still have to go back to their home environment?
You know what? It's really hard. And while you're talking about that, it kind of reminded me of a story. My first week at our mother's home, there was a resident there who was about to turn 18, and she had a 1-year-old daughter, and she was angry at the world for her whole life. And we have some rules in the house you got to follow to stay in the program. And she was upset with me and upset in general. And, she screamed at me, "You have no idea what I've gone through." Yeah. And I think our initial reaction is to say, "Oh, I do." And then I don't. You're right. I thought, I have had a very amazing life. I'm so thankful. My parents, they gave me everything I could ever. I really didn't have very much bad in my life, knock on wood. But taking that time to say, "You're right, I have no idea what you've been through." Yeah. It helps them realize, okay, but I want to help. I want to change. So to answer your question, we see these girls. So our mother's home provides a home for teen moms in the foster care system. And most of them come to us either in and out of foster care system their whole life, or they're in the human trafficking world. Wow. We've just started kind of over the last couple of years seeing a big increase in that, but then end up in the foster care system because of that. And then sometimes it's just straight, a teen is pregnant and the parents are not wanting to be any part of it and they have nowhere else to go. But they often do leave us and go back to that same community that's all they know. But all we can do, and what I try to focus on, is showing them there are options out there. So, for example, we had some girls from Guatemala who via Immokalee for the most part. They could not wait till the day they turned 18 so that they could go back to Immokalee and basically pick up where they left off. Wow. But when we start showing them education, programs, parenting classes, budgeting, seeing the other girls have jobs, things like that, we have every now and then a girl say, "Oh, you know what? I am going to go back to Immokalee, but I'm going to enroll in the tech school." Yeah. And they might be the first person that ever graduates high school in their whole family. So trying to recognize that we may not change everything. They're not going to be, maybe someone like you were there, just totally the black sheep and they move cross country, but maybe they change something very small that sets forth the next generation even bigger and bigger, and then hopefully it slowly changes. So how do the girls find you? They're recommended to us from DCF. So they have to be in the foster care system in order for them to come to us. So we are partially funded by DCF. We're the licensed home. Legally, I'm actually the foster parent. I have like 7 or 8 girls. Wow, that's interesting. Not necessarily me, but the home. Right. And because I oversee the home. So if they're looking for a person to put down, so I have a lot of children. Wow. But they come to us because they were either in a group home and they became pregnant and they can't stay there anymore. They were, for our human trafficking victims, they usually show up at the hospital to give birth, and the nurses start saying, "How old are you? Who's the father? Are you in school?" Lots of questions. Sometimes they're dropped off by the fathers because they don't want to get caught. I mean, we had a resident who was 15, dropped off to give birth at the hospital, and the dad never showed up again. He was in his 30s. Oh my gosh. So then they just come straight to us, literally in a hospital gown sometimes. Wow. So what is your capacity at the home? We can have 10 girls and 10 babies. We tend not to go over 8 because of the size of our home. But we're actually moving to your other backyard. So we have a building that we purchased at Evans and Winkler. So we're here. Yeah, that's wonderful. We'll be able to walk here if we want. Yeah. Wow. I was just about to say that. Do you have to turn anyone away? But now you won't have to. What would be your capacity there? We're not growing too much. It'll grow to 13, but right now we never go more than 8. So while you think 5 isn't a huge difference in the grand scheme of things, we don't have a waiting list of 20 girls, but we do have to turn people down sometimes. And the biggest thing about the new building is that when they're 18 now, that's when they leave us. And I was not ready at 18, and I had a very good supportive family, and I didn't have a baby. So now we'll be able to take 18 to 22-year-olds. I love it. Yeah. I love it. That's so important because legally you're 18. I have a 23-year-old daughter who is on her own. I had to let her go because she had it too good.
And then I have my son just turned 18 in November. But he is not financially ready to go out on his own in the real world. And I never understood that in the foster care system, how they age out. And even at 47, I'm still trying to figure out life, and it's tough. So imagine 18 and you have a baby, especially the cost of rent, the cost of living, everything is so expensive.
It honestly, that's my soapbox that we could have like another hour-long podcast on, because it's infuriating for the government to basically say, 18, good luck, we'll see you later. And these are the people who have never had support their whole life in the foster care system. And the ones that we work with, they have a baby or they're pregnant. And what are we supposed to say? Good luck. But we just don't have the space. And the requirements by DCF is we can't even have adults intermingling with minors. So if you're 18 and I'm 17, we cannot be in the same space. So that's why this new place will really help us. But I've tried so hard to talk to people about, like, there's got to be more services when they turn 18, because like you said, your son wasn't ready. I wasn't ready, and I had a really good upbringing, and I had a ton of support. But these, I mean, they are left with nothing sometimes.
And now I'm telling my age, but when I turned 17, my family decided to move to Riverside, and that's about an hour away from LA, and it's the country. So I went out there and I said there was nothing for me. So my mother rented me a one-bedroom apartment. It was a shotgun apartment. It was $375 a month, and I couldn't even afford that.
No, I mean...
And this was back in, I graduated in 93. I couldn't even afford that. But I made it happen because I wasn't going to the country. But look where we're at today. $375 a month for a one-bedroom apartment.
Apartments are $1,500 a month at a minimum.
Right. It's crazy. So with that said, I understand before the podcast started, we talked about you really growing nonprofits. And I love it. I love projects. I love projects. I'm a fixer. So when you said that, I'm like, whoa, I got to hear more. So you like growing nonprofits. So tell me about your experience and strategies you've used to grow the nonprofits that you've worked with.
So I love what you do too. That's why I was excited to be here, because I think we have a similar mindset.
Yes.
My previous nonprofit where I was executive director is the Deaf and Hard of Hearing Center.
I know the person who's there now.
Yeah. So I don't necessarily have an allegiance to a specific nonprofit. There's a lot of things I like. There are some places I wouldn't go to just because I need to be passionate about it. But I just generally like taking something small and growing it to the next level. But one of the things that I think is huge for a small nonprofit is treating it like a business, because so often, and I've been in nonprofit, whether I'm the director or in a different capacity, for over 10 years now, and everybody says, nonprofit, don't spend money.
Right.
Have the worst of everything, get everything donated, take everything you can for free. And while that is true, there are things you need to take for free. There's also, something to be said about taking pride in who you are and what you look like. So, I mean, your office is gorgeous and beautiful.
Thank you.
I feel the same way about the couple of nonprofits that I've ran. I was coming into buildings that were falling apart, and we only take furniture that's donated.
Wow.
And that's just not how... If that's how it looks, then imagine how the people feel when they come in. Imagine how donors feel when they come in. People don't want to give their money to a space that looks like at any moment it's going to fall apart.
Right.
And I mean, literally and figuratively,
You're absolutely right, because with my business, I really don't need an office space because I was doing it from my home for a number of years. But I looked around how I was growing all of my clients' business, but I wasn't growing. I'm like, that's stupid. So, and even though I didn't need an office, I did lease an office anyway, but guess what? My business grew. Now, I don't know if it was because my mindset or I had a place to meet with my clients instead of Starbucks, but my place grew. And again, we just moved into this place. It's a lot of space. But if you have a growth mentality, you have to have a mindset of abundance. You have to affirm and tell God what you want, and He makes it happen. You don't know how, when, where it's going to happen, but you got to believe. And then that's the saying by walking by faith and not by sight. And that's the same thing with nonprofits. Your board can make or break you, because ultimately they make the decisions, right? They vote. So if you have a board with the mindset, oh, we're just a nonprofit, we just can't do that. No, we can't grow like that. So it's important when it comes to choosing a board. Do you have any advice you can give a nonprofit when they're thinking about putting together their board matrix?
I think for sure you need to have like-minded people on your board, and you need to have, yes, the board is the boss. They're the ones that oversee. So it's a kind of a catch-22 in my mind, because when I see a board, I think they're my boss, but I also think I want to be interviewing them as well, because is this a good fit? Because I am not a type of person that likes to be micromanaged. I also don't micromanage. So I want you to say, we'll trust you until we can't trust you anymore. And so when I was hired at our mother's home, I had a great board, and I basically said up front, I need you guys to just trust me. I'm here to take this business to the next level. And I said business because a nonprofit is a business.
That's right.
And I need you guys to have a little faith. Let me spend a little bit of our money, and I promise it'll come back. And this time, we've been here for 23 years, just yesterday, so I want to kind of like toot my own horn, but shout out. We had a positive $183,000 this year.
Wow.
First time in 23-year history.
Really?
Got 2022, $183,000 in the bank that we were able to save.
Wow.
And that's what I mean when people say, a nonprofit, you're not supposed to make money.
Yes, you can.
It's sustainability. We need to invest in our future, invest in ourselves. So we're not going to spend that money. We're going to save it. We're going to invest it. We're going to put it towards our new building, things like that. But that's where I need, for your board question, you need to be trusting in them, and they need to be trusting in you.
Exactly. Yeah, because it's very important. When I often work with nonprofits, especially the startups, the first thing is they put all their family members and friends on the board. Okay, that's great to get let's get the paperwork through. But let's really think about that, because when we're thinking about our board of directors, we want people who can give, and leverage organization, because it makes all the difference. We just talked about your event that you just had. It makes all the difference, because your connection and my connections are limited. But if you have one board member who can invite 5-10 people, and it just grows from there, and then their connections, and it grows like a pyramid scheme. So that's very important. Before we wrap up, can you share with me, when you're running a small business, you have to think about big picture thinking and what makes sense to outsource. I always recommend my nonprofit babies to outsource certain things. Number one is your bookkeeping.
Yes.
Right? So you never want to forget to file your 990 and your annual report. And if you have a treasurer, as you know, your treasurer on the board is a volunteer role. If they leave, then you're in big trouble. But if you had like a bookkeeping or accounting firm who can hand over, say, the profit and loss statement to your treasurer, and they're just reporting at the meeting, that's so much easier. What are some of the other things, if it was a small nonprofit just trying to grow, that you feel that you would recommend, or in your opinion you've done in the past, to outsource so that the executive director can focus on the big picture, which is really growing the nonprofit?
And I will say too, just to touch on your bookkeeping point, prior to me, which even before me, we had always had a volunteer bookkeeper, the treasurer, and she retired. So thankfully they hired somebody before I even started. It was only about 2 or 3 months though, so we're learning together. But an example of how a bookkeeping company can help you is they came to me this year and said, the IRS is doing an employee retention tax credit during COVID. You qualify. We qualified for $55,000.
Wow.
Now, granted, they took a large chunk of that. They're going to be upfront with you, but that's money that I would have never even known existed. I would have not. I looked at the application because, of course, in my mind, I'm like, oh, you guys charge 30%. Can I do this on my own? No, I cannot.
No.
So we did get a lot of that back. We already got the check and everything. So very good idea. Another thing I would think, if you can invest in it, and it doesn't have to be this company, but we use Network for Good, some sort of donor management system that is going to track your donors, track your donations, in kind and monetary, but it also comes with a platform. It hosts events for you, so you can post an event, people can purchase tickets through that. They have e-blasts, so you can communicate. So I schedule email blasts to be sent out probably every other week, just to kind of keep in contact with those people. And then, like we were talking about earlier, is one of the biggest things that I like that Network for Good does, which I'm sure other places do as well, is thank you follow-ups. So Network for Good has the ability to text a thank you to a donor. And as the director or CEO, you can decide what level it'd be worth your time. But I take about 20 to 30 minutes every week. I sit down and I go through every donation we've gotten that week. And I send a thank you text video. And Network for Good makes it so easy. You just click the button, it records you, and it sends it out. And I just make it personalized. Hey, Tamika, thank you so much for donating that $100 to us. It goes straight to our mission. We have babies, so I sometimes have a baby on my lap.
Yeah.
If you're the Humane Society, put a dog in the picture or whatever you got going to show it off. And it's a 20-second video. You send it off. I can't tell you how many people have said, greatest thing I've ever seen. Thank you so much. I'll be donating more. And they do. They keep coming back. So just pay attention to your donors. Make sure they feel loved. Make sure they feel appreciated.
That's very important. Donor stewardship is very important, not just contacting the donor when it's time to buy a ticket for your next event or when it's time to ask for money. I call it, and it's not unique, I'm not the only one who does this, but dating your donor.
Yeah.
Throughout the year, dating your donor and ultimately propose in marriage. And I look at marriage as leaving a planned gift with your nonprofit. And that's a whole nother topic. I know it's really uncomfortable to talk about, planned giving, but guess what? We're all going away one day.
Yeah.
We don't know when, but just listening to key words that your donor may say. Maybe they just lost a spouse and maybe they don't have any family. And just having a simple conversation with them. And you don't have to be knowledgeable 100% about, planned giving options like charitable remainder trust. You can have a relationship with, say, a estate planning attorney or a financial advisor that you can turn over that relationship to, and then they could work it out and they could think about you and their estate plans. And a lot of donors oftentimes think that, well, I don't have any money, I can't leave anything. Yeah, they could have a life insurance and leave you a percentage of that life insurance policy. So there are other strategies, but if you don't talk to your donors about it, you don't have those conversations, they will never even think about it, because we talk about sustainability because most of our donors, most of our volunteers are older, but they're not going to be here forever.
Right.
So once that wealth transfer happens, say in the next 15 to 20 years, their grandchildren or their children may have different things they're passionate about.
Yeah.
So that money goes away. And I just wish that more nonprofits would think about that when we talk about long-term sustainability, so that endowment and that planned giving program. So with that said, the last thing I want to cover before we wrap up is you mentioned an event that you just had. And I like that it was small. It didn't cost a lot of money. And how did you come up with the idea in the first place, and what cost-saving measures you use? Because oftentimes nonprofit, they have these events and they put on these big shows and they hire bands and they have these performers, and I'm like, why? All of that money could be going back in your mission. Tell me about the event you recently did at the restaurant.
We did an event called A Seat at the Table, and it's prior to me, our mother's home had a signature event called Charity, and it was an old school event, I guess you could say. It was at a country club. It was a tea party, and artists from around the area would paint little chairs. They were kind of smaller, and they would go to a tea party at the Estero Country Club. When I came in, it had been canceled 2 years in a row due to COVID. And they had about 15 chairs that they had just been holding on to. Oh. And a couple of the board members kept reminding me, like, don't forget charity, charity. And I finally said, I'm going to be honest with you, charity is not my thing. Like, I don't know if you've seen me, if you've seen like my personality. I am not an old school tea party kind of person. I've got like half a sleeve tattoo. It's just not who I am. But let's table it. Like, I want to get passionate about something.
Right.
Mara Nasher is the COO of Conrick PR, and she's our vice president. She came to me one day and she said, okay, you don't like charity. What about a seat at the table? That's so relevant right now. It's a hot topic, all about letting everybody feel included. I loved it. I just took it and rode with it. So we had 50 chairs painted from all over artists all over the area. And we worked with Gloria Jordan from La Trattoria. And it was basically just a dinner where everybody got dinner, a couple of bottles or glasses of wine, champagne toast, and then they actually got a literal seat at the table. They got to take a chair home with them. But the whole point of the event was just conversations. So I went through, I mean, if you're a small nonprofit, you're a one-man band.
Right.
So I am the marketing person, I am the event person, I am the volunteer coordinator, I'm everything. So I was Googling at night conversation topics to talk about. I was printing them on cards in our printer and cutting them myself while I'm at home. So you have to be able to take on a lot of the logistics yourself. You can save a ton of money. I could have easily gone to Staples and paid for it to be done there, but those are just things that take your time, but that's free. So if you have that ability to save your time, but just make it simple, you know? Sometimes you have these 200, 300 person galas and you're spending $50,000. If you're a small nonprofit, you don't have the time or the people or probably the donor base. Like, to be honest, we really don't have that kind of donor base. I don't have a donor in my back pocket that's going to donate $100,000 at an event. It's just not going to happen for us. Maybe another nonprofit I run some other time, but not this one. So you have to use your resources, and like you said, ask your board. Hey, every board member needs to buy a ticket.
With that said, thank you so much for your time. Can you please share with our audience how they can reach you?
Sure. And thank you. This has been a lot of fun. You were right. It flew by.
I know, right?
So Our Mother's Home is, you can go to www.ourmothershome.org. You can email me. It's Alicia, Alicia, at ourmothershome.org. Our phone number, 239-267-4663.
Guys, thank you so much. If you want to get involved with Our Mother's Home as a donor or a volunteer, I'm sure they're looking for your help.
Yes.
Right?
Oh, yeah.
So thank you so much, and stay tuned.